June 9th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we interview Alex and Emily, developers for Muse Games.
Let's do this.
You know, it's funny how the less time we have to do some sort of news or thing of the day or anything, the more news there is. And it's not just on Tuesdays, it's pretty much every day of the week.
Well, they had the stupid D conference, they had the stupid E3, and they had the stupid Steve Jobs all in like the same 2 weeks. You know, I think from now on, right? I mean, basically, last year at this time, there was also a Steve Jobs, and it's the year before, right? You know, because that's pretty much, I think the iPhone is always going to get updated in June every year forever.
Yeah, but look, the iPhone got updated right after the pre, and then we had E3.
Yeah, I know, right?
Did you see all those other cell phones that were announced?
You know what I realized today? Verizon doesn't have shit for phones.
No, they don't. Well, I was
It's
actually...
like T-Mobile's got the G1, Sprint got pre, AT&T got iPhone, Verizon got dick for dick.
And I mean, I was actually looking to check when my contract, like the day the contract might expires and all that stuff. But yeah, they said, hey, upgrade your phone, get a new contract. And they didn't have any good phones.
No.
I could get some like normal crap phone.
It's a Tuesday episode, technically speaking.
Yes, we should talk about video games.
Do you want to talk about any of the E3 whatnots?
I don't know. We'll probably have to do a show about several of these announcements. I mean, there's so much to talk about. We haven't even talked about how NS is available, NS2. We can pre-order it.
Oh, man, we didn't, yeah.
No.
Shits.
That is a day that I did not expect to come as soon as it did. That came out of nowhere.
Then again, there are people out there who have Duke Nukem Forever pre-orders.
Plus, there's the new Zelda game and the other new Zelda game that was hinted at.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Well, they basically, all they had to do is release that screenshot. And wasn't it Miyamoto who said, yeah, there's a reason he doesn't have a sword, and everyone lost their shit.
How about that Metroid game?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that.
How about that Four Swords Mario game?
The thing is, that could be what the Mario remake on the DS should have been.
I like how they're acting like Four Swords doesn't exist, right? It's like they make this game that's basically Four Swords, but they're acting like they just came up with this brilliant idea.
I know. I mean, Four Swords, in my opinion, was one of the better games Nintendo ever put out.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened is that just so few people like actually played a lot of those things from that era, except for us.
The era when Miyamoto was sad.
Yeah, so they can pass off that shit again. And however, I think that the platforming aspect will make that game a lot more frustrating. I mean, it was bad enough in Zelda that you'd have people setting each other on fire. And, you know, I'm talking about the not on purpose times. You know, the on purpose times are perfectly okay. But in this game, you're going to have
on record, Captain.
Yeah, in this game, there's going to be plenty of on purpose pushing the other guy in a hole. But I think there's going to be even more accidental pushing the guy in the hole, and it's not going to be good.
Well, it depends on
Unless
how
you
they
have
do it.
4 skilled players.
If it were set up such that 4 people could go, say the worlds were the little boards were like Mario 3 boards, and you could all go in different directions.
Yeah, I think it keeps you on the same screen.
See, that's
from
a
what
problem.
I've seen.
While Four Swords was good with the same screen and the splitting, you could also make a really good game if people can just go off.
Yeah. They really need to do something. No, I don't think there is a game like that where they should really make a DS game where everyone can just go off on the same map, you know? And not only the thing is, like, you know, there are some games like that where you can just go off, but it's usually bad to go off. You know, you need like 2 people in the same place to like navigate a puzzle or something like that. You know, so you want to stick together.
Or Four Swords
and also fight the bad guys at the same time to kill them quicker.
Four Swords rewards you if you run off by giving you gemmies, but it hurts everybody because you can't actually go forward.
Well, it also doesn't let you. It lets you run off, but it doesn't let you run off very far. It keeps you in the same place. I'm talking about a game where it's like, let's say it's a big Final Fantasy dungeon, even a roguelike, and you can just run off. It's basically a local MMO. It loads the whole instance, and everyone, not only should you go off, but you can.
Well, the thing is,
not only can, but should you.
Nintendo barely scratched the surface with the idea of you having your own screen with hidden information. And
well, they did. The DS sort of does that now, without any help from...
What games do it well?
I mean... Advance Wars with Fog of War?
Advance Wars is probably the best multiplayer game on the DS still.
Yeah.
I mean, look, most games, they have multiplayer.
But it's joke multiplayer.
It's always some weekend, like Castlevania, beat the other guy's time.
Yeah, they always have. Why do they feel the need to like put in this joke Well, actually, the puzzle games, Tetris, Puyo Pop, those have good
all
multiplayer.
those.
Mario Kart, if it didn't have snaking, those sorts. But
You know why? I can tell you why. Because then they can put that multiplayer logo on the box.
yeah,
And
even
grandma
though the
buys
games
it.
have like some sort of joke ass, not even worth playing multiplayer. Listen, if there's a part of your game that's not even worth playing, don't put it in there. I know someone's gonna say, "Oh, might as well, right? It can't hurt." Yeah, it kind of can hurt. It's just they're
seems like
spending time and money making that shit. They could
really-
have made another level.
They
instead.
really the thing that bothered me is playing the old Chrono Trigger remake, and they basically added an entire crappy version of Pokemon to the game.
Whoa.
That you can go into this area and raise monsters and fight them. Like, why?
What does it have any connection to the actual game
I
part?
don't think so.
So it's just this tacked on the side thing.
I think you can.
It's basically Chrono Trigger plus bad Pokemon on the same cartridge, like Mario and Duck Hunt on the same cartridge.
I think you can get some sort of item. I don't know. I walked in there to see what it was, and I walked right back out.
Let's check that game facts.
Anyway, we're going to cut short. We're not going to talk about all the E3 stuff. We'll let that ferment for a while. Maybe we'll do an extra Tuesday episode next week to catch up. But tonight we have an interview with two game developers, Emily and Alex, who work for Muse Games.
And live down the street.
Yeah, it's the Emily and Alex of the Front Row crew who also happen to be game developers.
Guess.
For real game developers, too. Not like, not like a lot of people are game developers.
Yeah, right? Like, what was that guy who made the game for the GBA that Nintendo didn't accept?
That guy, while he was crazy, he gets a lot of points for determination.
If you consider those points.
Well, I didn't. What are you going to redeem them for?
Oh, they're negative points.
Space-
I would say
space
for
points.
crazy
Space points.
Space points. You need 1 billion to add up to one regular point.
But Emily and Alex work for Muse Games, a small game studio, and they've made a game, Elementia, that you will link to that you can play. And we're going to interview them shortly.
We already did.
And now we're just going to play the audio from the interview we conducted last night. Well, thanks to all sorts of microphone shenanigans, there are somehow 4 microphones plugged into this mixer board here.
Of varying quality, shape, and size.
We've got Rim and Scott, as always, on the SM57s, or 58s.
No, they're not 58s. We need to get some of those.
Yeah, we do.
And here's Emily on the headset.
And Alex on this thing, I don't actually know what the technical term
That's the
for it
Radio
is.
Shack piece of shit, is the technical term.
Okay,
That is, in fact-
POS it is.
That is, in
POS,
fact,
the Radio
a
Shack
that is a
POS.
famous microphone. Someday we will sell that on eBay. That was the first Geeknights microphone.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
honored.
That'd be great. Imagine if, like, say, I don't know, some famous radio guy was like, he made a radio show when he was like a kid in high school, and he had the microphone that he used. Like, man, what if I could go find my like Fisher Price tape recorder somewhere.
To your point.
I think that every little kid had that Fisher Price tape recorder because I've got all these, they're kind of preschool audio dramas.
That's I had
many of them concern like the alternate adventures of Peter Pan. They're like really, really weird. Or like there's this one where we were having a trial for a rabbit, and like it was actually kind of funny because it showed that even as like 6-year-olds we had a pretty good grasp of how the legal system worked. Like there was a prosecutor and a defense and everything.
We had
Rabbit,
ones.
did you chew on this thing?
We had ones that were they were like little books, and then they came with a tape that went with the book, so you would sort of listen to the tape while you read the book at the same time, and you get the sound effects, and it would read to you or whatever. But then on the reverse sides, it was always record whatever you want.
I still think the best thing was my mom dug out a whole bunch of tapes I had made when I was a little kid, and there was one where it was just, I would turn the tape recorder, I carried it with me everywhere, and so I'd turn the tape recorder on at random times, and so you just get these conversations from like 20 years ago. It was kind of wild. There was one where my mom was trying to get my toddler sister to get in the car and go to the clothing shop, and my sister was being really uncooperative, and so it's just this exchange, it was kind of funny. It's really nostalgic to listen
Wow,
to those
I have an
tapes.
hour of screaming and horrible noises mixed together in a loop that I then would randomly just play and hide the tape recorder somewhere.
Well, you remember Retro
You were
Arcade?
such a fun So you were so much fun for your parents' party guests.
Do you remember the Retro Arcade guy said that he had like a vinyl audio recording of his parents' wedding and he restored it for them?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's kind of awesome, man.
That is cool.
That guy is cool.
But the main reason, as we mentioned in the beginning, that we have these extra microphones here is that we actually, independently of Emily and Alex being friends of ours and such, they are both
Disclaimer. Woo.
game designers working in the actual gaming industry, making real games.
Oh boy, oh boy.
And pretty much we get the question either emailed to us or in the forums at least once an hour asking us how to be a game developer and what it's really like, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I remember a thread in the forums. There was like a kid in high school who was like, this is what I want to pursue as my career. Does anybody have any advice? And actually there were quite a few people like Mancoon, for example, who actually have worked in the game industry and immediately started giving this kid advice and warnings and like, sometimes you'll have to work on pretty Princess Pony games, even if you don't want to.
It really seems like there's like a few jobs that like in any sort of geek area, there's always like some job that someone wants. Like all the skater kids want to like be Tony Hawk for a living.
Yeah,
and all the gamer kids want to be like John Carmack for a living. And
or like programmers want to work at Google, or animators want to work at Pixar.
Literally every programmer to whom I ever heard the question asked at RIT would say, "Yeah, I want to make video games."
Yeah.
Like literally everyone.
So I guess the first question is, how did you two... Well, first, what do you both actually do? I mean, I can't explain to my grandma or my mom or anyone what I actually do for a living. So what do you actually do?
Well, I'll go first. It's actually kind of a small studio, so my work is a lot more varied than it probably would be if I worked for a big studio like EA. I do concept. My official title is a virtual world character designer, and so I do basically all the art assets that go into the games. I do the character design, start out with Photoshop paintings and model sheets, and then I go into 3D modeling, I texture, and sometimes rig. I had some help with rigging characters from an intern we had. He's still a very good friend of mine, but so modeling, rigging, basically the 3D character creation from start to finish. I do a lot of the animation as well. Design environments. I do, I guess one of my main things lately is I've just been producing a ton of textures for this virtual chat that we do. And so it's like, fashions for avatars and like 20 t-shirts a day or something, So what about you, Alex? What do you do?
Well, I program things. I would like to be more specific than that, but I really can't be.
Well, I don't know.
Like you said, it's a small studio, and we all kind of have to wear a bunch of hats.
Yeah.
So I do graphical effects, I do game logic, I do low-level networking stuff. I occasionally dabble in the website. Yeah.
Well, what's your actual job title? Because I remember it being something cool.
Yeah.
I am a virtual world architect, which I agree sounds really cool.
But it's basically...
It really means I do almost a little bit of almost everything.
Design the framework of every single game we do. And you also do some artistically oriented programming, like you do our shader development and particle simulations and stuff like that. Actually, many of the programming things that you do have a visual effect in the final product.
Yeah, I mean, it's effects programming, which is, I guess, the best I can come up with for an actual field for that. Mm-hmm. It falls into this weird line that kind of straddles the pure engineering and pure artistic ends of things. I'll agree, it's one of the more fun parts of my job.
So to really illustrate, I mean, people always ask, how do you get into the gaming industry? How did both of you get into the gaming industry? Because it seems like it's an impossible task for the majority of people who have ever lived in this earth.
Well, I think part of the thing is it seems very daunting because a lot of people, they try to go for the big industry, the big houses. And competition is very fierce for, like, say, EA or other, like Valve or something like that. But with me, I'm working for a startup, so I ended up getting into it by a kind of lucky chance here. I did a character design contest right when SoSauce, the parent company of Muse Games, was starting out, and that was back my senior year of college. And I remember spending one night in my dorm room. I think it was like on my birthday or something was the deadline, drawing these two characters for this design contest, and I got second place. I didn't win, but in return, they kept in contact with me, and I'd come in and test their web applications for their travel website. And so I got to learn, all the different people in the office, and we became kind of friends. And then one day, a few months later, I found out that they were looking for a character designer, and I was just graduating. It was like a month before I graduated, so I ran and I was like, me, seriously, that's what I do. And it worked out, and they looked at my portfolio and decided that I was good enough, and they hired me. And Alex, that was kind of funny for you too, because
the way I got into this is a lesson in the importance of connections. I got hired at this company basically because I knew
networking.
Emily. And the guy who had previously done my job had quit suddenly for
personal
reasons of his own.
Yeah.
And they needed a graphics programmer. And I happened to be a guy who'd done graphics programming, at least a little bit, even though I wasn't doing it professionally at the time.
But that was like your master's was in
it's what I had done in school. I had done computer science, but I had kind of focused on graphics programming broadly.
Well, plus you did that RIT special. Hey, stick around a little longer and you get a master's.
Yes, that means you have to call me master. I'm holding you to that.
Didn't you get to wear that special hat too at graduation?
I have a hood.
Ooh.
But yes, I was in the right place at the right time. The right place being looking for a job in the New York area. The right time being when the Social Sauce needed a graphics programmer.
Oh man, did we ever? We were like, you totally saved us. I was very worried for about a week there, like, oh my god, our main programmer's gone. What are we gonna do?
And as a result, because I'm working for a tiny little startup studio, my first job in the games industry is as basically the lead developer of a studio, which is really not something it's possible to do any other way. This is normally an industry where, as I understand it, you have to do a lot of grunt work before you get to do cool stuff.
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, I think that a lot of the punk kids out there, they want to make video games. I get the feeling that a lot of them think that they just are sort of going to get the Miyamoto job where you say what the game's going to be and then somehow it is. So what, you told us what you do on a broad level, but what do you do on the micro level? You go into work and is it, you're not playing video games all day.
Well, some days.
Only when I'm testing.
Yeah. But can I say something real quick? That one of the things that's good about going the indie route and working for a smaller studio is we kind of do this auteur thing where every game that we've created so far seems to be somebody's pet project. Like the game that we're going to be talking about today was basically Alex's creation. And sledding was Brian's, and the next game is Austin's. So it's like having such a small team, you do get to have a lot more creative freedom and input into the types of games that are being created. But
I mean, on a day-to-day basis, it's like any other programming job. I have a list of bugs, I go and fix them, or I have a list of features that I need to add to the software, or I have, the vague plan for a new piece of software that I'm in the process of either writing out or prototyping.
And I guess it's the same for me, where it's not every day that I'm doing original characters. It seems like a lot of the time I'll just go into work and make 50 chairs or something like that, or texture a bunch of crates. I remember having the conversation about making license plates, and like 90% of any computer job is just making the license plates.
Cryptonomica.
Yeah.
Neil Stevenson is
And,
wise
In some ways.
in some ways, in the ways of the geek, I guess.
So I guess very specifically, like just let's up the notch a little bit. Let's engage on the high level as we talked about last week.
Nah.
What specific skills or I guess classes from school would you say came the most in handy?
Or previous experiences also.
Well, I work mostly in C#, which is a language I had never used before I came to this job. But at my previous job, I had to learn Python, Perl, and PHP, which were also languages I had never used until that job. So especially if you're a programmer, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to pick up a new language as needed, pretty much, the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that times a billion. I mean, I've never had a job where I worked with James, I had to do Ruby, which I didn't really do before so much. And I mean, I've done Python sorta, but now's the first time I'm doing it for super reals times 100. And the job I got right out of college, I did PHP and MySQL, which I had sorta, kinda, maybe done in one class, kinda, not really.
Well, I think one of the most important things once you get out of college is that a lot of the times you're going to be teaching yourself. So make sure you go around the internet and find any available resources and tutorials and everything. I feel like I've gotten a lot better at, for example, modeling and texturing since I graduated college. I mean, most important classes, I think, for a character designer would definitely be like fine arts and figure drawing. You've got to be able to look at something and then be able to create a character from it. You've got to have a good grasp of anatomy. Whether or not you do 3D or 2D, it doesn't matter. Knowing the human form is going to be absolutely essential to anybody doing video game art. Also, yeah, basic, if you're a 3D artist, just take a lot of 3D classes. Make sure you get a very well-rounded education and don't just focus on one aspect. Do modeling, rigging, programming too can be very useful for rigging.
So it's interesting how in this whole discussion, the topic of designing games from a pure game perspective hasn't come up at all.
We haven't gotten there yet until you just brought it up right now.
I want to hear.
It seems like most kids who want to get into the gaming industry always think, "Oh, I got a great idea for a game," how much of the job is actually designing games from the game side versus implementing? This is a loaded question, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the design is a relatively small part of it on the one hand, but that's not to say it's a small thing. If you're going to actually specify a design at the level, the design of a game at a level that you could then go and implement it from an artistic or a programming standpoint, you need to get really frighteningly specific. I have somewhere probably about a 10 or 15 page document that is the original design doc for Elementia.
it's completely different.
Yeah, the game that it came out of it is actually very different from what that document originally specified because the thing that is most important, of course, is that the game should be fun.
Usability.
And if something about your game is not fun, change it.
A lot of professional game developers could learn that.
But we went through so many stages of playtesting and got so much feedback. I think you developed the original game within like 3 weeks or something. It was like inside of a month, wasn't it? And then
If you have a proper engine, which if you're going to go into game development, get a proper engine, because if you want to go into engine programming, that is a fine and good thing, but that is not game development. And do not fool yourself that if you're going to go into game development and write your own engine, it's not worth the effort 90% of the time.
The Love Guy did it, but he's crazy.
Well,
He's cool.
I think what
It's
it
not
is
impossible, but it's not what I would recommend as your first project.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, well, I think the thing about making engines from most of the people who've made engines is that, you have to sort of, if you're going to make an engine, it's sort of in the service of a game. It's like they didn't just make the Quake engine and then make Quake later. They made the Quake engine for Quake because there was no engine available that suited their needs or was even close.
Yep, I mean, look,
and
even
in the
Half-Life.
making of you need to make an actual game on the engine while you're making the engine so that you actually make the engine usable.
Well, even Half-Life. I mean, Half-Life itself, they took the Quake engine that already existed and they modified it to suit their own
Very
game.
heavily, though.
But they did. They took a basic engine and modified it. They didn't just write anything from scratch.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, especially for all you aspiring bedroom coders out there, you'll just save yourself a lot of work and produce probably a better looking product if you go for an engine that's already created.
It will save you a huge amount of time and headaches over very, very minor things. And as Emily suggested, you'll be able to get a playable prototype of your game in a week or two. And that first playable prototype is really important because that's going to tell you whether or not your basic concept is actually worth playing. All the design docs in the world will only take you so far. The design doc and, analysis of the game from a mathematical, theoretical standpoint can help put you in the right direction, but it won't itself let you synthesize a fun game. That theory doesn't seem to be developed yet.
Well, I mean, did you have any, you would think, right, on paper at least, that, the designing of a fun game, without, the trial and error method would be somewhere in the psychology department. Did you have any, psychology peoples on board?
Not as such, no.
As a hobbyist, I mean, you've thought a lot about the psychology of games yourself.
There is that part, yeah. The most directly psychological thing I can think of that came into the design was actually in terms of visual design, because that is what's going to turn people off or on to your game before they even have a chance to experience your clever mechanics, whatever they are.
Well, that is true. Most people do judge by the book by the cover, despite the saying as to not do so.
It was kind of weird because I remember we ended up doing the visual stuff. It actually wasn't a very taxing project as far as art design went, because there wasn't a lot of 3D modeling. It was mostly just these 2D character cards, these illustrations that I had to do. And I remember I presented these mood boards to show what I was kind of going for. And I remember our boss had some reservations. He said, I don't want this to be really heavy and dark and medieval looking. Even though it's got this alchemy theme, and mythology going on, I want it to be approachable.
Much more hardcore in the original design doc. And it's kind of lightened over time, which is fine because it wasn't necessary to the game.
He wanted it to be more approachable and less, hard fantasy looking. And I remember over that weekend, I did a series of 5 sketches. I did a digital painting and a medieval kind of illuminated manuscript looking. Ooh. And I did one that looked kind of Disney-esque. And then I did this cut paper design. And it was funny because even though it was one of the simplest illustrations, it seemed like everybody really liked that one, and it almost ended up with kind of this children's book theme to it, and I think that definitely changed the atmosphere of the game quite a bit.
It was, I still feel, a very striking design, and it's not one that you really see in any other game, at least none that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in South Park and such, but you don't see that in video games too often.
Yeah, I feel like there's some recent game that has this kind of ripped cut paper theme going. It's in a slightly different direction than ours. I can't remember what it's called.
The Blurst one, the Paper Moon, they did all with Sharpies and stuff.
But anyway, it was a distinctive style, and I think the distinctive style is going to help from that initial appeal point of view. It gets eyes on it, which is always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to talk about a little bit how the actual game mechanics changed over time?
I ever?
Yeah, it was very different.
Tell us how the game works. Just the basic.
Or
we don't need the rule book. We just need.
Tell us the concept you started with, and then we'll go from there through the evolutions.
All right. Well, as you may guess from the name of the game, Elementia, it's about elements. The 4 classical elements: earth, air, fire, water. And it's a 2D kind of tile-laying strategy game. The original idea of the game, I think it actually, on some level, came out of a conversation I had with you two guys over Japanese food.
I remember that time. We were at the Neko.
But it was have these 4 elements, have each of them provide a different benefit. and then using them in concert is the strategy you have to develop. And on top of that was developed this sort of cyclical element beating another, rather than the usual, well, more usual, two opposites, each of which can strike hard at the other. It's everything beats one thing and is beaten by one other thing in this perfect circle. If you've played the Fire Emblem games, it's very similar to the weapon triangles in there.
Yeah, the axe, the spear, and the sword.
Or
In this case, it's fire beats air, air beats earth, earth beats water, water beats fire.
Or Crystal Warriors for the Game Gear.
Well, if that's what is so a crossways is just even.
Yep.
Okay.
So you have that. You have the tile laying, which is there are two purposes to it. There's the arrange things so that elements are adjacent to one another and provide the bonuses you need, and there's the chain everything up to make attacks with. Since the way you do the attacks in this game, the more elements of the same color it passes through, the stronger it is. So what we were trying to do is to create this tension between you want to stretch out in this long, twisty chain, but that's inherently fragile, and you want to bunch things up to produce all the adjacency benefits and protect each other and heal each other and all that good stuff.
So did you start considering multiplayer from the start, or single player only, or what was your thinking along those lines?
Multiplayer was in mind from the start. The original idea for the multiplayer was this crazy shifting alliances thing. I'll say right now that a lot of stuff from Elementia I cribbed from one board game or another. The tile laying was originally basically straight out of T&E, Tigris and Euphrates, although it's kind of drifted since then. This alliance mechanic that it has also drifted from since then was inspired by Dune. And it ended up actually managing the alliances was going to be too complicated for what it would have gotten us. So we stuck to a strict, it's either a versus game or a co-op game.
There's actually a fair number of maps that you developed, and do you want to talk about like the way the placing of the elements changed? Because for a while it was a draft, and there were like cards, and then there was a point system, and
originally it was this card draw thing, and that ended up being basically wasn't adding anything anymore. So again, if a mechanic isn't helping, get rid of it. You don't need the extra complexity. The later development of this game was a battle with removing extra complexity.
Yeah. It's just keep it simple, and that was our mantra every day.
It's a very distinct thing between board games, which is on some level how I started thinking of this, and a video game, which is what it actually is. In that a board game, usually when you play it, you sit down and there is someone there to teach you. That is kind of a big crutch that board games can lean on, and they can have a lot more complexity and still appeal to a lot of people. Where for a video game, it has to be entirely self-taught, because even if you're playing multiplayer, you're usually not playing multiplayer with someone who's going to walk you through every action and teach you all the mechanics. Even when they're willing to, they're not in the same room, and it's really hard to do that over text chat or even voice chat if they can't point at the screen.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, like, how many times do I get like a Flash game, and even if there are instructions, I like maybe look at the controls and that's it. If I look at anything at all before I just click play and start playing, and you have such a short attention span with a video game, you just if you can't figure it out right away, it's like that's it, you're done.
People aren't willing to read instructions, and they aren't willing to figure it out for themselves. It's a catch-22.
But it's weird, because as much into games as I am, I'm like that. I mean, I sit down. I remember back in the day, I'd get an NES game, I'd take it home, I'd put it straight in, and I'd start the game. I'd hit A, see what A did, hit B, see what B did, hit them both. I'd just try every button combination, and then I'd go, and that was it.
Yeah, it's really hard on the computer though, because you have a keyboard with so many buttons that if you're going to use it at all, it's it's whoa.
Yeah, well, but even you guys, you're of a mindset that you'll sit down to do that to a game, and you'll actually do that until you figure it out.
Some people just go, this is complicated.
Sit down at that, say, it's complicated. I don't want to bother.
Did you see that a lot in the testing? Like, you'd get someone to play the game and they'd be like, it's too complicated. What do I do?
Yeah, the UI went through numerous revisions as a result of all that.
I think that was probably the biggest challenge in getting the game ready for release, was getting the UI so it wasn't confusing people. Seemed like no matter what we did or how we designed the wheel at the bottom showing the progression of the elements, everybody was like, what does this do? I don't understand this game at all. all.
Yeah, so there were a lot of iterations. There was, again, complexity being stripped out where it wasn't absolutely strictly necessary. And in the end, I think we actually came up with something pretty cool. And all this iteration and forcing us to think about it did help the final product.
Yeah, I mean that's something I've noticed a lot actually is that, when I look at indie games and when I look at professionally made games, it seems like the indie games have these really good ideas, but they really struggle on like a lot of basic things like controls and interface and these sorts of things. And the professional games often might not have much interesting going on in terms of the actual game, but the interface is always correct and the controls always work and are well calibrated and all that.
That's what you get when you can hire a dedicated interface designer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seriously. We did have an intern that you'd let him test stuff and.
Yes, having you need testing in any software development. In game development, you need more and additional kinds of testing than I think in any other kind. With the possible exception of life or death stuff like air traffic control.
Yeah, seriously.
Because in addition to testing the pure functionality of it, you need to test that very subjective, is it fun thing. And you need to test that on people who have never played the game before, which becomes increasingly hard to find as you run through your list of friends who are willing to test.
And all sorts of people, like, you want to try to get different demographics to test it and see, okay, so this is big with board gamers, but does this 30-year-old lawyer lady like to play
So you're
it or something?
dragging old ladies in off the street to play the game.
No, but we do have once a month we have this open studio night where it's the Muse Games game night where you can come and eat free pizza and test the games. So that actually helped a little bit in getting a variety of people to just give us their basic reactions on the
That was a
pre-release.
huge help.
Yeah.
Well worth the cost of the pizza.
Oh, yes.
Yes, totally.
So did you ever get frustrated showing someone a game and trying to not explain things to them to see if they figure it out on their own and seeing them clearly not figuring it out even though it's so obvious to you?
Yes, but I was helped in that before we ran the first of these game nights, I'd been flipping through various game design documents from other companies. Valve in particular has a huge resource of stuff they just put online. It's their old GDC presentations and that sort of thing. One of which was about the importance of hands-off testing, where you, the designer, don't sit there and walk someone through the game. You stand back and you watch their reaction.
See when they flounder and see when they're really picking it up quick and stuff like that. And it's hard because it's like, having played the game so many times and being so familiar, at least I end up kind of lacking a perspective. So I just want to be like, no, see, that's how you do it. But you just got to force yourself to let them figure it out on their own.
And acknowledge if they can't figure it out on your own, you're doing something wrong.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that's what you're going to work on tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, games do exist that people figure out on their own. So if yours isn't, then that's...
Well, hopefully it is now.
So does your game have any sort of musics going on?
Oh, I loved musics. It was an acquaintance of our marketing guy and the guy who designed the website, Austin. And there was this composer that he knew, and we sent him some demo tracks. And one of the things, my vote was, I was like, I want something kind of ephemeral, kind of like that End of Time from Chrono Trigger. And he wrote back, he was like, I love Chrono Trigger. He's actually a pretty big video gamer, so...
and that's when we knew we had probably found the right guy.
Yeah. his tracks turned out really nicely. I don't know how you describe it, kind of bells and piano, and it's not too overpowering. It's not like a big grandiose score, but...
I mean, this is... It's kind of a contemplative game, and I think the music reinforces that.
Yeah.
Do you have sound effects, like, explosions and whatnot? Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Did you make them, or did you just buy them, or what?
We've got a sound library.
Yeah, we have a sound library that was minimally massaged by me wearing a sound designer hat.
And I created the particle effects to go along with those sound effects. So like if you click on the fire attack, there'll be like flames, and it will go.
So you were listening to the sound, and then you had to make an animation that matched it,
was
as opposed
actually
to vice versa.
Opposite, wasn't it? I think
Yes,
the particles
we did the
came
graphical
before
stuff first, and then we
before the
realized
sound.
we really needed sound in this thing. And
Yeah, I think the sound adds a lot. I mean, people, when you're not actually creating a game, I guess people don't realize how much just simple sound effects will add to the overall product.
Well, I mean, think about that Terminator game for the NES. That soundtrack.
Yeah, where everything was the same exact noise.
It just goes boop.
No matter what happens, you shoot, you get hit. Boop. Or Atari.
Seriously.
Yeah. So, do you guys have like a, you're not a big game studio. You're probably not selling this thing for like $50, right? So, is there what is the money making strategies you got there?
It's the core game itself is free, playable to anybody who has the Unity plugin.
Is that also free?
Yes, it
Unity
is.
plugin is completely free, and I'd actually recommend you download it. I mean, I know a lot of the people listening to the show are probably really leery of installing any, plugins on their computer, but there's this browser plugin that works with the game engine that we use, Unity 3D, and allows you for 3D game content in your browser.
And it's not just us who are using it. There
It's
are
a
a few
ton of
big
people,
companies who are
actually.
using it, and there are a million little indie game developers using it. So, so far as I know, there's nothing else that is actually really doing this right now in terms of letting you put 3D stuff in a web page. There's the nascent Google and Mozilla efforts, but
Yeah.
even those, they're maybe 3D, but they're not a full game
Well,
engine.
they're
They're
the
really
pseudo ones, too.
proprietary too.
I mean, there's like the Quake Live, which
Yeah,
is basically
how
just a
does that-
separate application.
Is-
Or
yeah.
freaking Instant Action, which is just a wrapper that lets it install any application it wants.
Whoa.
Oh, is that how that works?
That's
Yes.
how that works.
Ah.
But it's basically like the 3D version of Flash is, I guess, the easiest way I've heard it explained. So you install the plugin, you go to our site, and the game's there to play. But we will release further maps and other characters through the store. And the part of the thing with Elementia is it's got this mythological theme, and there's all these, the sun, the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, very, very Greek mythology oriented. And I guess half of the characters as of yet are free, and the other half, they have different powers, different special abilities. You can buy them for a pittance in the Muse Games store.
And because I know someone out there is going to ask this, because it's the question I would ask. No, you do not get the inherently better characters by spending money on them. We were
just
very
different.
careful about this.
Yeah.
The additional characters do provide you with other options. All the characters are asymmetrical. They provide for very different play styles.
Yeah.
But we were very careful to try to not make any of them strictly better than the others, because
So the people who spend money are not just going to win?
no,
No.
because we've seen how that ruins a game.
Yeah.
Gunbound.
Yeah.
Gunbound.
So
Bungie.
so it's not the Korean model. It's just sort of people who are big fans and want to do something different.
Yeah, if they want to
Consider it
make a new
equivalent
strategy.
to
or
having a free demo, and then you pay for the full version.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is really good about the game is one, it's 2-player multiplayer, 4-player multiplayer. It's either versus or cooperative. It's it can be played totally solitaire, and the thing with the maps is you made a whole bunch of different variations where the plague, the enemy, grows in different ways, and there's different obstacles and stuff like that. Layout of the board changes with each new map.
Provide some replayability there.
Yeah.
Well, that stuff really reminds me of the miasma from Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Wasn't it based in part on the fungi from Nausicaa Valley of the
A
Winds?
little bit, because
Scary.
we were also, because it used to be called putrefaction before it was called the plague, and I thought the sea of corruption, so I spent like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours just digging up pictures of mushrooms and the black mold in Michigan and Nausicaa. I looked at all these weird plants from Nausicaa, and so the gloppiness of the enemy is a little bit based on that. It's kind of moldy.
So you said it was a browser plugin. So does it work in all the browsers? I mean, like Safari 4 just came out today. I don't know. It probably doesn't work in that, right?
I'm not sure about Safari 4. It does work in Safari. If it doesn't work in Safari 4, it probably will shortly.
All right.
It works in IE, Mozilla, Chrome, Safari, on Windows and Mac. There is no Linux version, unfortunately.
Oh, so sad.
There is demand for this, and the developers of Unity have said that they're looking into it, but they haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, that's
They
good.
better do my facial morph targets before they do that.
Do you find that it works? But I mean, like when you make a website, you always have to worry about all the different browsers. Does this have a problem with that, or
No, the Unity itself is actually very good about cross-browser compatibility. There are occasional wrinkles with the cross-operating system compatibility because it uses different layers to talk to the hardware.
Yeah.
But even those are relatively minor.
All right, so you wouldn't like recommend one browser over the other for playing it. You would just say we use whichever one is the one you're using.
Sadly, I have to. Generally, yes. Sadly, I have to make a ding against Firefox, and that Firefox apparently has terrible memory management on some level, and it causes weird garbage collector hiccups.
That's
but nothing you can't play through.
So that's Firefox 3 you're talking about?
That is Firefox 3.
I would be interested in Firefox 3.5. Have you tested that out?
I have not. I'll have to do that.
That'd be interesting, yeah. That's enough technical whatnots.
So you guys have played the game, right?
I played it a few times.
A little bit. I played it while I was having beer and pizza after work
Of course,
at one of those game
I
nights.
think I've only played the actual finished game, though, like once or twice. I played the unfinished game a few other times.
I
so
remember you were very obsessed with the old man. You're like, old man!
Well, I like the characters a
That
lot.
is a thing for old men.
Lemon Party.
You brought it up, not us.
Rim brought it up.
Lemon Party.
All right, now this is not good promotional material.
The characters are all, it's like on the one hand they're like all, sort of, stylistic, but they're also sort of cute and quirky in a way. It's like
They do all have a lot of personality.
yeah, it's like whenever I play a video game with characters, like a fighting game or a whatever, it's like there's always some character who's obviously better or worse, right? But I try not to pick based on that. It's like when I play a board game, I always pick green because I like green. So when I play a video game and there's a character selection, I try to pick a character that looks as a something I like. So if I'm playing Street Fighter, I'll pick M. Bison because I just like his look better than I like the other people. Or I'll pick Siegfried in Soul Calibur because he's a big knight with a giant sword, and all the other people are sort of I'm not interested in them. So. In this game, there's sort of like this quirky old man with a cane, and he's sort of like, ooh, and his head's like leaning over a little bit, and he's sort of like, he reminds me of sort of like, like the sort of silly old man in a lot of animes and whatnot.
I should do you a little animation of him just to make you happy. Like take After Effects and be like, doo 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 doo.
Oh, so he's
The
not
Walk
animated
Cycle.
in the actual game?
No, he's not animated. I didn't have time to do that. I was
so
making
sad.
T-shirts. What
Are
do
you
you
gonna?
want from me?
Do you plan to not the game is like done and out, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So are you going to continue though to iterate upon it, or are you just gonna leave it be and move on?
That's partly going to depend on what feedback we get about it. I don't
Maybe
think
new
any
maps,
of the
but-
other games we've released have ever actually been finished, so I see no
Yeah.
reason to expect that for this one.
Yeah. But on the other hand, part of the reason why I didn't animate the characters, on the character cards was that we do have 2 other games in the pipeline. This is really only our second full game release. I mean, we have that virtual world chat, but that's not really a a game per se.
Although, in fairness, a lot of the technology we developed for that fed into all our other games.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, it had the most art asset creation for it. But and so this is like our second game after Extreme Sledding, and there's 2 other games in the pipeline.
Can you tell us anything about them, or is that still a proprietary
What do you
secret?
think? Can I say the buzzword for the one?
I think we can say one magical word about one of them.
Air
Airships.
pirates.
That's 2 words.
Oh no!
That's really gonna make some
Air pirates and airships. Be prepared.
So, having actually brought this game to completion from the beginning as kind of, people just getting into the gaming industry, what did you learn? What would you have done differently making this from the start, making this game?
Well, one, I have a much greater grasp of how much complexity you can actually expect people to pick up on, especially for a little browser game. And it has taught me to rein in my ambitions for the future.
Yeah. And I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, like I said, it was a very simple game as far as art asset creation, but I think one thing that really left an impression on me is, GUI design is incredibly important, and I should definitely start earlier in the design process with developing a GUI. And like each iteration, each change in gameplay, you got to adjust your ideas of, the layout of the interface. And I guess the interface, we really started working on that way late in the game. We had like a very standard boxes thing
It was crab people
for a
for far too
long
long.
time. Yeah. So I think for every time Alex changes a gameplay element, I think I'll also have to look at it and along with our other design people like Austin and kind of brainstorm about how can we make this particular iteration very intuitive and playable.
If you're one of those aspiring game developers out there, I have a piece of very, I think, cogent advice for you. Inevitably, if you're a wannabe game developer, you have in mind some huge, sprawling game. Statistically, from what I've seen, it's very likely to be an RPG, but it doesn't have to be. With a million really cool and novel mechanics and really great graphics and a really awesome story and wonderful music. And that's great, and that's a great thing to shoot for, but you have to understand you're not going to make it on your first try.
It's kind of like...
And you have to be willing to focus on the things that are really important about the game, the most important elements, whatever they are. Make those work. And if you can add stuff that works with them rather than against them, great. But if you can't, leave it small and perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like how I was when I first entered film school. It's like I really wanted to do this big epic feature thing. And then I realized, no, just concentrate on getting a damn good 3 minutes worth of footage and then start to increase your ambition. But yeah, start small and start solid. Come up with something really well thought out, and then you can start to work your way up the ladder.
Do not allow yourself the luxury of saying, I know this and this and this. This one part I'm kind of fuzzy on, but I'll figure it out later. No. Sit down and figure that part out now.
Or else it'd be Dwarf Fortress?
I don't know. I don't think that's where Dwarf Fortress has issues.
You don't think so?
It has issues, I won't deny. But,
I just wanted to rip on Dwarf Fortress.
But so you too, with review time. Do you like the game? Yes or no? Why and?
I don't know if I've played it enough to figure out if I like it, or not. I got to play it a few more times because it definitely, when I played it most recently, it was way different from what I remembered. Because
we were playing like that beta version on the
right.
Mac
I remember
and
I was
TV
playing the
downstairs.
beta
We were doing the
version.
hot seat version. We were all sitting in front of the TV downstairs.
Yeah, I played the
doing that. That
beta
was
version,
fun.
and it seemed kind of because like I would put out a whole bunch of balls and they would die really slowly, and it was sort of like it was at a it was like I couldn't tell if I was winning or losing, and I could put so much stuff out, and it was just sort of like this attrition kind of thing. But when I played it more recently against Alex, it just sort of got creamed immediately. So it was definitely a much tighter game where you can it was a very
But you were
significant winning
playing
and
against
losing.
Alex.
Well, there's
But,
definitely the increasing cost as you do one action more and more to discourage the, obvious make a whole bunch of red and then destroy a whole bunch of stuff with that red.
I
Those
Yeah,
sort
it
of
moved-
like the
strategies.
increasing price mechanic. I think that added a lot.
Well, I think what it is, to sum up what I was saying, is that in the earlier version of the game, it felt like your individual moves mattered less, and in the more recent one, each move matters a whole lot more. And so a wrong move here or there can, be the difference. So there's actually significant decisions being made all the time. And that is definitely a good thing in a game that I like, at least. I don't know about other people.
I think it was Sid Meier who said the immortal phrase that every game designer should know: a game is a series of interesting decisions.
Yes, that is correct.
I guess I feel like it'll shine the most in multiplayer because knowing that there's a human making these important decisions on the other side always means a lot to me. And of course, you all out in the forums can just play this game with us.
Just please play this game. Everybody listening, please, Emily asks you, please go check it out. I'd be very happy.
And if you have things to say, good or bad, just post them in the forum.
yeah, or
You know,
email us.
We're there. We'll listen.
Yeah, seriously, think us, we're front row crew. Just,
Yes, you've got the rare opportunity to talk directly to the game designers about a game they made.
yeah, and we might actually listen to you. That's a rarity in this business.
Except with Tribes too, where they listen too
Oh,
much.
but let's not go down that road.
So the game is a browser plugin-y thing,
Yeah.
and other browser games, like say Desktop Tower Defense, they get posted on like a whole bunch of different sites. Is it possible to put like a Unity game on like the Congregate and all sorts of places, or is it only at your website?
It is possible to put a Unity game on any site you want. I don't believe Congregate supports them yet, although I've heard internal mutterings that they might eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I could see it partly just because Unity it really serves a different purpose from Flash, and it does 3D.
Well, it's definitely more game-centric. I mean, is Unity used for anything that's not a game?
The
yeah.
closest non-game thing I've seen it used for is educational simulations of various kinds.
That's
and
sort
also
of a game.
architectural visualization.
Oh, that's
I've
very good.
seen
That's true.
I've seen architectural stuff done with it.
But it is very specifically a game engine, as
Yeah.
opposed to Flash,
With
which is
physics
this animation tool come programming tool
Yeah,
thing.
actually, I think in terms of game, like the programming side of it, it manages the physics and stuff very well, which Flash does not do. Anyway, Muse Games, there aren't really any Unity game portals right now, but we're kind of hoping that maybe someday our site can become a hub for independent developers, us as a studio, but also us as a community.
That's a
For-
good thing. That's
for
definitely
Unity.
a good thing to go for. I mean, nothing succeeds today without building a community around it.
That's the
Absolutely,
big part
we
of
agree.
it, yeah.
Podcast, game, open source project.
And another part of our business plan is, even though we're a very small team, we're about 5 people, we really want to make games that are fun to play multiplayer over the internet. So both multiplayer and single player is one of the requirements for every game we do.
So you had 5 people. About how long did it take? From like
This
the day
game?
you,
From
yeah.
let's
Okay.
make a game from let's make this game to it is
Today,
out last
yes.
Friday.
Well, Muse Games itself was launched on April 14th, but this game has been in development since when about?
It's a few months ago. I spent about a month doing the original design document, but that was not the only thing I was working on at the time. That
that's
was in
the
between
thing.
other projects.
It's really hard to think because we're always doing
It
all
was
sorts
then
of other.
about 2 weeks to have what I would actually call a playable prototype, and then about another 3 weeks to a month of work to get it to the final state. Again, interspersed with other projects. Here and there, which is why it's actually been more like 2 months since the design document was
Well,
finished.
2
Yeah.
months is pretty good for an entire game. I mean, at that rate, you could make 6 games a year. And when you're at least from what I've seen, if you're making small games that are probably not going to be like stupid popular all over the internet. It's quantity is a good thing to have.
That is roughly what we're shooting for, is a
Yeah.
game every 2 months, especially now that the site is up and we can focus our energies on the actual games.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. There was a lot of, creating icons for the store and stuff like that. And since we all
yeah.
have many hats,
So you
we
won't have
had
to do that
do,
again because they'll just there's
Nope,
already there.
the site is there, and we can really hone in on doing the, about 8 weeks of full-on game development if stuff goes well.
So the game is Elementia,
Elementia!
Muse Studios.
But the link is on frontrowcrew.com.
MuseGames.com.
Yep, there will be links in the show notes. You can find that. This was Emily Compton and Alex Strawberry Sirius.
Jaraka Ernst.
I know his name. Why don't you know it?
Well, he does know my name. He just knows it only in translation, apparently.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com, or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.